WMMSshow.com. You can watch there. New episode of the Bill Squire Show is up there.
Called Hot and Sticky.
Hot and Sticky. And a brand new episode of the Poundcake podcast. It's called A Man in Uniform, where he talks to a dude who knows some stuff about government. Have you got any feedback on the latest episode?
I did. They thought it was interesting, and also apparently the aunt of the guest I'm interviewing is a fan of the show. Is a fan.
Oh yeah.
She commented.
Well, he's a local guy, right? I mean,
he's from around here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she commented on my Instagram story. She's like, "Hey, that's my nephew."
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that was fun.
Well, good.
Yeah, it was a different guest.
Alan Cox Show After Hours line. Anytime you want to leave us a message there, you can. 216-986-8903.
Hi, guys. I am so sorry to hear about your father, Alan. But did they at least offer a Father's Day discount? I mean, it was, like, close. Anyway, Gene from Parma. Love the show. And hate it as well.
I didn't recognize Gene from Parma at first.
No, I knew it was him.
Oh,
yeah.
you did?
Yeah.
Gene from Parma. Did they? Was he implying that they should have given me a Father's Day discount on the casket, or what? What did he mean?
I mean, yeah, considering it happened so close to Father's Day.
He was buried 2 days before Father's Day, yeah. No, there were no, trust me, if you've ever
service or something.
If you've ever gone through the funeral home process, they're not giving anybody discounts on anything. No. That is a volume business, my friend. It makes a great case for cremation. If you go through the process of, because a lot of people were saying to me earlier in the week, they're like, Catholics are okay with being cremated. And I go, yeah, they are now, but my parents are old school. Me and my siblings will be the first generation in our family to lean into cremation. My parents and their parents before them, and those people are all buried.
You got to be in the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know many, no one in my family. My uncle was cremated, the one that died right before my graduation party. But he was cremated because no one had no money. Like, he was spread on top of my grandmother's grave. But that
because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to get cremated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was mean, so no one was about to fork over money. Because every funeral, we gotta call all the family members. How much can you do?
You gotta pitch in, yeah.
Man, but they're so stingy. My mom and my aunt usually put up the most. People be like, well, I'll give $50. $50? Y'all not. They're like, well, I'll.
Yeah, but people don't have. I mean, burying somebody is very expensive.
That's why we all chip in together.
And the bulk of the charges go to whatever services the funeral home is providing. I mean, we got a casket and a vault, because it's got to go in the vault. We got a casket and a vault for my dad for under $5,000.
A vault.
And so, now, again, I don't know if that's by law everywhere. In Illinois it is. But, I mean, and my dad is... my mom has already visited my dad a couple of times, and the cemetery is 45 minutes outside the city. So she's got to drive. It's not anywhere near us because my mom wanted her and my dad to be buried next to her parents, my maternal grandparents, in the same cemetery, a couple of rows away. It's what she wanted. My dad's family's all over the place. None of his family came to the wake or the funeral.
Why?
Well, I guess his sister is taking care of one of his other brothers because his brother is paralyzed or something. I don't know. And she was kind of like, he's not real close with his family. I mean, his dad died. We never met my dad's dad because his dad died when my dad was 15. Mm-hmm. The rest of his family left Alabama and went somewhere else. My dad stayed behind and put himself through school and college and grad school, and he went in the Army and the whole bit. So they were estranged most of his life. And so I think his sister lives in Vegas or something.
So she was like, it's just not worth it.
Well, she's like, I'm the only caretaker for his other sibling. She was talking to my sister. I don't think I've ever spoken to the woman. I don't know any of my dad's siblings, but none of them were at his funeral or his wake.
That's crazy. See, that's the only time we do see family members. Like any other time, yep, can't make it. Graduation party, might not get there. Wedding, they'll have another one. But a funeral, no one misses a funeral. People come far and wide.
Well, because there'd be lunch after, too.
Exactly. They ain't paid for nothing. That's
and we
what I'm
didn't
saying.
do that. My mom was really kind of, she was really kind of beside herself because traditionally you do that. You do the lunch thing or whatever. And we weren't going to do that because the trip to the cemetery was so long. And so we didn't know how many people were actually going to come out to that service anyway. And we figured if it's just immediate family, that'll be fine too.
How many people?
And it mostly was. What's that?
How many people you think were there?
At the burial? At the cemetery?
Yeah.
I mean, all of us in like our immediate family and then like a handful of his friends. Like his work colleagues that are older than him but outlived him. Like friends he's had for like 50 years, right? Guys I remember from when I was a kid who are still around. So they came out. And I said, that's fine too. But my mom was really like racked with, because that's traditionally what happens. Like when my grandmother died, we had this like luncheon in the basement of the church, but it was all the old biddies in town who like volunteered to cook and stuff. We didn't have anything like that. So we're like, we're not going to do this huge thing for people that, you know, there's just too much other stuff going on. And so we didn't do that. And I'm sure it was fine.
Yeah. Funerals, again.
But a lot of people have an issue, and you can't blame people for like, I'll kick in $50 because people don't have that much money to begin with.
Okay.
And second of all, like,
but they're going to come though.
But the person who's dead doesn't care. So when everybody else is paying like 5 figures to bury somebody, like they don't, you know, you look at this and you're like, we're kicking out a ton of money for it. Dad would not care at all.
It's different in the black. Here I go talk about the black community again.
Well, you are black,
but I don't know.
I'll defer to your expertise.
I don't know the white side of my family, and I've only been to one white funeral, and that was my grandmother's. That was my father's mother, so my grandmother on my dad's side, and you know that was the only Catholic funeral. They had the little kneeling thing in front. I was like, "What's that?" And my mom had to tell me. So all the other funerals I've been to.
Did you think you sat on it, or what did you think you did?
Well, I kind of figured it out, but I'm like, that they do that. I didn't know. It seems so old timey, but I never been to a Catholic.
Yeah, Catholics are kind of old timey.
Yeah, I had
been
never
around for a little while. Yeah, but you're not unfamiliar with the process of kneeling in a church, Catholic or otherwise.
We don't kneel in a church.
Baptist church don't kneel?
No.
Huh?
We didn't kneel either.
You sit or stand?
Like we wouldn't kneel during like the ceremonies.
Okay.
You sit or stand, and then you go to the altar, and they'll lay hands on you, and then you fall backwards with a little blanket.
I didn't realize that the kneeling was like a Catholic thing.
It was my grandmother on my dad's side's funeral was the quietest funeral I've ever been to in my life. Like she's just laying there all sad and depressed and dead, and everyone's coming in there.
You know, she was sad, depressed, and dead.
But it was just
and not necessarily in that order.
I prefer my dead people to be quiet.
People had their.
It's when they start all those posthumous reflexes kick in and they start farting and screaming. That's when I have a problem.
There was no other relatives there other than my dad and my brother and my mom. So all the rest of them were like my dad's friends, and they were all quiet with their little rosaries swaying from side to side. You want to talk about uncomfortable.
You hear the clicking and the clacking of the rosary beads?
I was uncomfortable, and they just kind of swayed there. No one said a word. No one was crying. It was just like that. And I said, I don't like this. Now, going back to my black family, my black funerals are very different. The reason why I talk about people not pitching in is because they know they're going to show up to the funeral. They are going to show up because it's not a funeral, it's a homegoing celebration. Right. So you wear your finest Kentucky Derby hat, your finest outfit, you go there to judge, and then you're going to eat afterwards and talk about how such and such was horrible to you while they were alive, but I feel bad for the kids. And it's a chance for everyone to show off their food because someone might make a pie, someone makes some ribs or whatever. Someone's throwing down. So
yeah, not only that, but the deceased is propped up behind the drums, right? Like they're embalmed and they're wearing like a Browns jersey or something, and that's the fun part.
And then
like after my dad's wake, it was a 2-hour visitation and then a rosary. I felt like I was like 10 years old again. I don't say the rosary, but we're sitting there because the priest came and did it, and everybody, we're up front, everybody behind us doing the rosary.
And
my dad's laying there in the casket. He couldn't care less.
People were wailing. Was anybody wailing at your place?
No. You mean like the rending of garments and gnashing of teeth, that kind of stuff?
No, crying.
No, I understand. Crying in like falling
on the floor, like rolling around.
Right.
No one was
like a Middle Eastern city was just bombed. That kind of crying and wailing.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. Okay. No, there's some crying, but I mean, it's not No, Catholics are very reserved. They're not
That's what I'm talking
overt.
about.
Yeah, it's very quiet. It's very Gregorian in nature.
You know, the Baptist, my Baptist community, nah. We rolling, we crying, we flailing, we leaving, we coming
But why
back.
is that?
We're chasing after the coffin. I don't know.
I've always
I don't know
wondered.
why.
I mean, I've always wondered. You know, when you'll see other countries or other cultures crying and screaming and throwing themselves on the casket, I'm like, and I'm not saying that it's not sad if someone you loved was killed.
We view
but these
death
are
differently.
But there are parts of the world where like that's a regular thing, and there's a part of my brain that goes, you think to some degree in your deepest reptilian brain you would be used to people dying around you. I've never understood like the screaming and the throwing on the casket. And I was like, people die all the time.
But it's not a close relative to you.
No, but like my dad just died, and I've done plenty of crying over the past 2 weeks, but it was not like wailing and screaming and
I can't say for sure, but my family, we don't get together that often unless there's a big event. We don't have regular family reunions. That's why it's so foreign for us to have a family vacation. We don't do that. A lot of us are very estranged. And when someone dies, chances are the people that are wailing don't have closure on something. They don't have closure, and now they're never going to get it. So that's the best way I can explain it to you. I have a huge family, cousins that I haven't spoken to in over a decade.
and they all show up when someone dies
Depends on where they are in the ranks. Because if you have one pissed off cousin,
in the ranks.
well, I'm just saying, if you have one pissed off cousin, yeah, you can come to the funeral. But if you pissed off a mass of cousins, then no, you can't come to the funeral because there'll be a fight.
So how are these things determined? How do you figure out who can come and who can't?
When you get an invite, but when everyone else,
Oh, you get an invite.
you know if you're invited. You get the call. Like,
I see.
Such and such passed away. Services will be here. Bring you and the boys. That's what people will say to my
So
mom.
it's not
Bring
just
you
a
and the
matter
boys.
of it's not just a matter of the obituary gets passed around or put in the paper. Or something.
There's no obituary getting passed around. You get the obituary or you get the flyer at the funeral home.
You want to talk about a racket? The obituary in the newspaper.
Yeah.
$650 for 1 day.
Why would you do that?
Well, because we were all trying to tell my mom, skip the obituary in the newspaper. And she's like, well, how are people going to know? And I said, Mom,
No one's reading the newspaper.
Well, no, her generation is. That was her point, which I think is a valid point. But
Yeah,
I was
I
also
think so.
I was also trying to tell her, from what I've seen, your generation is also way on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Judging from some of the posts I've seen from your generation, they're way into Facebook. So you can take, because there's no obituary on the funeral home website, just share that to Facebook. She wanted to do the newspaper too. So we tried to dissuade her from it because we're like, you're going to get no coverage if it's in 1 day for $650. But she wanted to do it because I think, again, that's my mom's 73 years old. Like, people her age are looking at the paper and probably looking in the obituaries to see who they know who died. So, yeah, I don't know. But that was how people knew. I mean, obviously, people we were close to, we told, and they knew. But Tia, who's number 314 on the blacklist, says, don't forget relatives jumping inside the coffin screaming, take me with you. Is that a thing?
Yes.
Take me with you?
Just take me with you, or like, don't leave me. Like,
But they've already left. They're in the coffin. They've
Alan,
been dressed.
They don't get closure. They don't. Like a lot of
what?
a lot of
There
black.
are plenty but there are plenty of any color families who get to spend their relatives' last minutes with them.
Not a lot of them. A lot of black families.
I think there's also speaking. Like, I don't think it's for like old people, like an elderly person like your father. I think they're talking about like somebody that dies young,
Like a kid that gets shot in the street or something?
Yeah.
I mean-
okay, well, that's a whole different thing.
No, but I'm not. I've never had somebody die that young in my family. Knock on wood. All of mine have been old. Like I take my mom for instance. Like my mom was estranged from her dad. Like I didn't know my mom's father, but I knew I had one, and he was like around. He didn't live that far away. They just never really talked. They just weren't. They weren't close. All of a sudden, when he died, she was very depressed, and she was just like, and I regret saying some of the stuff I said to her because I didn't really take it seriously. I was a kid, and I made fun of her outfit that she wore to her dad's funeral. I said, "You're wearing that?" I was a child, but I was like, "You're wearing that?" And she was like, "You got something to say to me?" Like,
see, when he was a kid, he would say it. As an adult, he would still think it.
Yeah, I think
he just wouldn't say it.
Yeah. And so I could see that hurt her, and she was like really depressed about it. Then when she got to the funeral, she lost it. Like, she lost herself, and she was crawling all over the coffin and saying, "No, please don't leave me." I'm like, I saw this guy a total of maybe like 3 times. 3 times I saw this dude. And she never got the closure that she wanted, so she took the death really hard. And that was the only other parent she had.
Listen, everybody grieves in a different way. People know that.
But again,
but there's also like that's putting the spotlight on yourself when it should be on the guy in the casket.
Alan, no, that's not, people grieve like that. If
no,
that's
I understand. Listen. I grew up going to funerals. People in my extended family died young, had heart attacks at like 44 or whatever. I grew up going to funerals. Okay. And yes, they were largely Catholic funerals. But I've been to other kinds of funerals.
A black funeral?
Yeah, I've been to a couple black funerals. I've never seen anybody throw themselves on the casket and wail.
Okay. Well,
I mean, don't you think that... I guarantee you don't see that at every funeral you go to.
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
They don't have the little nurses walking around ready to, like, take people out?
It all seems very performative to me.
It's
like,
not
I've been to black funerals. I've never seen that.
You've never seen the people walking around with the nurses hats
I will
on?
take your word for it. But it's like, no, I have not seen that.
So you've never been to a funeral where they have like 2 nurses walking around ready to take people out that, you know, pass out.
All I'll say is I didn't notice that.
They hyperventilate.
If they were there, I did not notice that.
Yeah, they say.
Is it like old-timey where they're wearing the white caps with the red crosses on them?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yes, it is.
So you have to take a time machine to the 20s to find these kinds of nurses, and then...
They fall over, and then they'll take you out.
I haven't seen that.
Give you some water so you can, like, calm down. They'll take you to, like, another room where you can just, like... calm down, but yeah, it happens. So especially when you...
I mean, I understand that if you're at a funeral that has a tiny casket, right? But a grown-ass person in the casket, like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I believe you. I just haven't ever seen it.
It mainly happens when the church starts singing, and then people catch, like, the Holy Ghost, and then people fall out, like... Like they just start going ham.
It's all very performative, though. It's you know.
But I think
everything is a performance. It's not a performance.
But I think that's how they show their grief, though.
They have to get it out. They're never. They realize that they're never going to get another chance to see this person, and they don't know how to handle that. So it's all coming out at once.
Yeah.
And I feel like once you do that, once you let it out, that big squeal, that big cry, you want to roll on the ground and like a toddler, you let it out and then it's done. I don't think they do that at home.
I know that I had a real hard time leaving my dad's hospital room. I couldn't compose myself trying to leave his hospital room. Even though he was lying there, he'd been dead for, 35, 40 minutes by the time we all cleared out of that hospital room. He'd been in there for a week, 8 days maybe. I could not bring myself because I was like, this is the last time I'm going to see him like this.
Yeah, it's
right? I took a picture.
Very final.
Of your dad's body?
Yes. In the hospital bed after he died. I took a picture.
Do you have recordings of his voice? Because he could come back to life through Alexa.
I read about that. Yeah. No, I didn't do that.
No,
he didn't have his teeth in. I could barely understand him.
I know, but
no,
like
but it was like I could
older videos. You can.
Oh yeah. No, but I had a very hard time getting myself out of that room because I felt like a couple different times I would turn around and walk out, and but I was like, this is it, because I knew the next time it's going to be in the coffin and he's not going to look like himself, and boy, he did not, because there's no way around that, and so. Then I'm like, okay, well, then tomorrow at the Mass, like at the wake, this is the last time I'm going to see him. Because at the Mass, we're pallbearers, but the casket's closed. That's not open at the Mass.
I've been meaning to tell you this. It's not your fault.
What? Thanks. What's not my fault?
I don't want you to be beating yourself up.
Oh, yeah.
And make sure you know it's not your fault.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean... You didn't think it could be, right?
No, I didn't think it could be my fault. That my dad got cancer 15 years ago? No, it was not my fault.
You don't think that there's nothing there's things that you could have done better so he didn't get that cancer?
Oh, you mean if I had comported myself better as a young man?
Maybe if you had been honest about the
I was the golden child in that family.
Yeah. I don't know. You got in a lot of trouble at school for being a
That is true.
wise
All
ass.
of my teachers that came through that reception line told me how awful I was. I'm like, this is how you want to see me after 40 years? This is what you want to tell me at my dad's wake? What a pain in the ass I was? They think they're being funny. They think we're reminiscing. I go, we have different reminiscences here, right? You gave me a D in conduct for that quarter. I got my ass whooped because of you. So I'm glad you can laugh about it now in front of my dad's casket. You dusty-ass trick. That's what I called my 8th grade teacher, right to her face. You dusty-ass trick. Okay, listen, I got to take a break. You want to get the last word in? Shoot me a text, 35192, and we'll be back.